Yes, and our guest is here. We'd like to welcome on our first live guest that we have had, Mr. Jim Duquette. Jim,
Wow.
dude,
I'm
I,
the
I, I
first.
got to do this. This is my first time hosting. So, XM Radio host. So we worked together with XM Radio down in spring training and doing shows together. Former GM of James's Mets. I apologize for that one. I do have to say it.
Can we get
I
Scott
saw,
Kazmir back?
I saw James at the NLCS well, he was outside. We were in the booth there, and it was like totally unexpected. And yet you had your hood up. Did you have a winter hat on that day too? I feel like you were like incognito, and
I
the only way I could see it was you kind of pulled your like hoodie back, whatever. And I'm like, James, what's up, buddy?
Well, since the show started, I've become a big star, so I've got to go incognito everywhere I go, Jim.
Of course, of course. I mean, that's just you. You are a star in New York. David doesn't know it yet, but he walks the streets in New York with a disguise just because.
It's smart.
Yeah,
It truly is smart. I can't imagine living in New York, that life James is living right now, just being just a stud. Everybody wants him. Everybody's looking at him, saying, "I want to be that guy on closers." Okay, this is James's favorite time of year, the free agency. Once a hot stove starts going, he is actually weirdly actually pretty good at figuring out where players are going and contracts and stuff. Does this excite you too? Is this that part of your life that you've lived and being a GM that excites you, or is this just part of the gig?
No, I like this time of the year. The reason why I mean I love baseball in the sport itself is it's a 12-month a year type of arrangement, and each year has its own cycle, right? So now we're in that winter season where we're talking contracts and team building and trades, all those things that take a lot of time and effort from the general manager. And yeah, I really enjoy it. I enjoy the trade rumors, any of the predictions where it comes to the teams, the dollar amounts. I mean that stuff that I enjoyed even when I was in the front office negotiating them. I hated it when we didn't come up with a player or two. But yeah, I mean that's part of the adrenaline of the position.
yeah. Like I said to you before, I wish I could grow up and to be Jim Duquette. I've always wanted to be a GM. It's just the coolest job on the planet. So, if you were the GM of the New York Mets right now, and you know that your boss Steve Cohen wants Juan Soto, how do you go about getting him without Scott Boras talking to other teams?
Well, there's no way you can do that. I mean, it's a you realize in the negotiation that he's going to try to use those teams and leverage those teams against you.
Yeah.
You know that Steve Cohen has a good relationship there with Scott, so you want to include him in all these, and wherever Steve can be helpful, I think it's incumbent that you use him in that regard. He is a great resource. He's negotiated a lot of deals. Obviously, he's a very successful guy. So I think you're kind of doing this in tandem, together if you're David Stearns. And the hard part is like, okay, what's going to be the difference, or we'll call it the delta between what you have to pay and what the Yankees have to pay? Because I really think it's going to be a two-team race more than anything else. What's that? The Yankees, if it's close, I'm hearing he'll go back to the Yankees. So how much more do you have to pay, as a premium to get Soto in a Mets uniform? That's a hard question to answer, and you're constantly trying to figure that out.
If you're okay, let's say this: you're calling it a two team race. So let's use as an example. Let's use the Yankees. You've got more issues than right field, right? So you've got maybe a third base issue. You have first base issue. You got a starting pitching issue. You got definitely a reliever or two issue. Do you start going out and engaging in conversations with other players as well, and start trying to sign some of those other players, or do you have to pause that in case Soto signs you and you're taking all those financial resources and you have to change all of that? Are you proactive on all the markets trying to bring players in, or are you kind of trying to just keep those teams on a leash, or those players on a leash, in case you get Soto?
Yeah. So on the Yankees side, really, this fits for the Mets too. If Soto's your prize, obviously you're all in there. but you better not put all of your eggs in that basket,
Right.
because one team's going to be disappointed, right? So you have to plan for a plan B and C and D. And part of that is understanding your internal options and who can fit what roles. And then, all right, hey, and you're reaching out to, let's say in the Yankees case, you're reaching out to, in my mind, Bregman or Adames, because they could use third base, right? They, trying to check and see if Torres, where he is, to decide if you want to have him back at second base. You're having those kind of you're looking and trying to keep an eye on the market for Santander in the outfield. So those are guys, and they're all, Alonso or Christian Walker are, potential candidates for the Yankees too. So I think all of those are in play. And as you guys know, this offseason evolves. It's a very fluid situation. So some guys are coming off the board before you know exactly where Soto is going to land, and that leaves you in a really uncomfortable position. It's kind of what Scott Boras wants to happen, so that you have to overpay even more for your plan A because plan B and C are gone. So that's the thing that you're trying to push this Soto thing to a conclusion if you can, and keep those other balls up in the air.
Duke, do you think that Boras is going to be a little more difficult to deal with this year after, let's call it what it was? It was a debacle last year for his free agents. You think he's going to say, you know what, I've got the hammer right now, and I'm going to prove that I am the big dog again?
I mean, I think that, there's an ego in any part of the sport that you have to keep, kind of balance or maintain. And I think from his side of things, he's trying to get the most dollars, as always, for his players, trying to do the best he can for them. Obviously, it didn't work out very well. But, I think also you look at it realistically, some of those players had flaws to their game that, prevented them from getting top dollar. He has some of the top position players at each position in the sport. So he's going to do well. He's going to do well with Corbin Burns. He's going to do well with Kikuchi and Alonso and Bregman and Soto. He controls, I think, 40% of the top 15, I think, somewhere in that range, free agents. So, I don't know necessarily that if he looks at it like that. He obviously, the year it was 2019 going into 2020, where he signed Strasburg, Cole, and Rendon. And I don't keep track of these, but it's probably an unofficial record for the amount of money that was signed in the winter. And I think he's going to surpass that this year.
I imagine he's definitely going to surpass that without a doubt. I don't even think that's going to be hard to surpass that this year. If you're the Yankees, and I want to bring this back, you kind of brought up some of these players that I've talked about on here, is Santander, like Christian Walker, Bregman, Snell, and a reliever. You could almost split up with those 5 players for the amount of money, maybe, like in a long run, and that's going to take to get a Soto back.
Right.
Do you end up being a better team by bringing all of those type of players? I mean, and you can drop a Christian Walker, maybe it's an Alonso, and you can grab, there's little things there, and obviously move Chisholm back to a little bit more of a natural position. Are you a better team versus just going after the biggest dog? And don't get me wrong, the best player,
right?
But I think they can be better.
Listen, I think generally I would rather spread out the dollar amount and kind of take the portfolio approach that you're suggesting. The way I describe it, it's because you can limit your risk. What if Soto gets injured next year?
Right.
And that's where you've invested all of your money. Okay, now your plan's gone down the drain, right? And even if, and injuries are going to be a part of it, but even if you had injuries to, let's say, 4 or 5 of the guys that you were talking about signing, then you're still protected to some degree. There's a couple of issues that I have with that. First off, you can't assume that all of them are going to want to sign with your team, right? So of those 5, if you're lucky, you get 2 of them, maybe 3. But it's it's not that easy just to get them to convince them to come. Secondly, there's no guarantee they can play in New York or handle New York. I mean, Yankees know this as recently as Sonny Gray. We had with the Mets, we had players too. I think the last one I can remember didn't really work out for the Mets was after me. It was Jason Bay. He didn't. So there are guys like that just can't handle New York, and so you kind of run into that too. The guy, Juan Soto can handle New York, and the other third aspect is, when you're playing facing off. You guys both know this, David. Pitching like not everybody can hit good pitching in the postseason like you're seeing all the time. You're seeing everybody's best all the time, and most of the time they're rested, or if they're not rested, they're giving you max effort. And finding those guys that can hit that type of pitching, like Juan Soto can, there's just not a lot of them out there, and that's why he's getting paid that kind of money.
I think he's showed it a little bit, right?
Jim, I know we have very little time left with you. Who's the number 2 guy that everybody's going after right now? Is it Roki Sasaki? Is it Willie Adames? I heard a lot about Willie Adames the last few days.
Adames is getting a lot of attention, obviously for his position at short, but he's also willing to move to third or second. Sasaki, I feel like he's in some ways, he's a bit of a draft,
he's like a unicorn.
Experience, he's a unicorn, but he's an experienced college guy that could come right to the big leagues and he could produce for you. But you're gonna have to be protecting him. Gonna have to develop him too. Like there's some things you have to be careful with him workload wise. But I mean, he has tremendous upside. I think those are the 2 individuals in particular. And Corbin Burns, of course, is going to be in that mix. But that's what makes this exciting to me is like you got 3 or 4 or 5 guys that are all quality that are really going to be talked about a lot.
When you're a GM and you're looking at a Blake Snell, right? Obviously, we know he definitely didn't hurt his drafts or his free agency stock this year. I don't know. He helped it. Just depends on what level, because he did finally pass that 5-inning mark. Let's just call it that. We all know what it is. Do you have reservations though, as being a GM and negotiating with him, knowing the type of deal he's going to want? He's going to want either a massive deal or basically what he signed with the Giants with more money. It's just. And he's going to take an out. Like he's already shown, like the moment he had success, he took an out. And right. I understand why, but does that make it tougher as a GM to look at him and say, where's the confidence that you're going to want to stay here and pitch in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years?
Sure. So I used to not like the out clause. Like if I was making the commitment dollar wise, I want you to make the commitment back, but I don't mind giving the out clauses now. Kind of like what the Yankees had with Garrett Cole, like, okay, we want you, but if you're going to try to, negotiate for more money, all right, go ahead. We know you're 34 years old. Good luck going out there and getting 4 more years for what we're paying you. Things like that. So, Snell's a different case because, he's still, there's always that, okay, never threw a no-hitter. Now he has, complete game. Now he has, but it's not enough for me. It's like far and few between, right? He's got the book cover and he's got the end of the book. Those are fantastic. And in between those pages, the story is mixed, right? So some of it's good, some of it's not so good. It's like if you're writing a book, there's like there's stories that are half finished. In the middle there's 120 innings. That's not a full story for me. That's not a full season. You're right. You need 180 innings, 160 somewhere in that range. So with that though, that whatever he's out there for, it's going to be electric, right? So I feel like there's teams that know him better, like San Francisco, that would have the advantage and be able to, find a spot for him, but, and utilize him better than most and be willing to maybe stretch a little bit more. So I don't know. We'll see if he ends up. San Francisco needs pitching. They need him. I would love to see him go back there. I think that was a good fit.
Right, and they have the history, so that's not the worst fit in the world. But Jim, I know you got to get going, so really want to appreciate you coming on. Again, you will find Jim Duquette on XM Radio, MLB Network on XM Radio. Awesome guy, very knowledgeable, and James just gets to give you crap every single time we see you, so that's fine.
And the first live guest, which I cannot believe, I love that. All right,
you're the best, Duke. Thanks so much,
guys.
buddy.
Talk to you later.